much cozier. You know, one of the things I don't like about speaking on this stage is that I'm so high above everybody, and you're looking up. And the reason for that, if you've ever been in a situation where somebody has taken a picture of you from underneath looking up, everything here gets bigger. It's like a bullfrog. And sometimes I notice that on YouTube, but I might be too picky. Anyway, I want to start out today. My cousin Ozzy had Thanksgiving dinner. This is one of the first times that he did it all by himself. It was at his house, cooked a big turkey, had a bunch of friends over and relatives. Everybody was seated at the table. Cousin Ozzy comes in with the turkey, all cooked to perfection, and he didn't see the dog laying on the floor before him. Trips over the dog, and the turkey goes flying off the platter, lands on the floor. The dog takes that as an invitation to be a guest at the Thanksgiving table, gets all over it and starts licking the turkey. Cousin Ozzy reaches down, picks the turkey up by the leg, goes into the kitchen, and puts some paper towels over it, rubs it down with butter, puts it on the platter, takes it back. And he says, "Thank God I baked too." Okie dokie. Well, today I'm going to talk about the grace of God. And the grace of God is a power that we have. It is a gift. We don't have to do anything to receive it. We don't have to do anything to activate it. It is there. And grace is the power we've been given to recover. No matter what we've been through, no matter how difficult it was, it could be a friend that has disrespected us. It could be somebody that died. A very difficult relationship that's moving towards separation. Whatever it is, those events in life sometimes knock us down to the point where we don't think we're going to be able to get back up. So it casts a shadow across our light. And as we move through life, even though we still find pockets of happiness and joy and very rewarding experiences, there's still a shade over that. We don't experience life to its fullest because we're still in that same spot where we're carrying forward a lot of stuff from the past. Any alcoholic or drug addict that's been in the grips of addiction knows what grace is when they recover. How can somebody who is so addicted and in so much trouble and in so much pain be able to move beyond that and return to a life that is full of happiness, joy, and fulfillment? Sometimes when these situations happen in our lives, we get involved in thinking too much. Now, life is totally an emotional experience. If you imagine for a moment that the computer is like our thinking mind, and it tells us stuff, but that has no effect whatsoever on us unless we have some sort of an emotional attachment. Emotions are everything. And when we get knocked down by life during the difficult times and our emotions turn to sadness and sorrow, perhaps guilt and shame, and those emotions dictate every part of our lives. And we try to live in today, into the present, with the thoughts and the consciousness of yesterday. And just think about that for a moment. We try to live with yesterday's consciousness today, and that just doesn't work if we want to make changes in our lives. There was a fellow named Jacques Henry Fabre, a French researcher, and he studied bugs and plants and all sorts of different things, but one thing in specific that he studied was the processionary caterpillar. And he studied that because he was amused at how processionary caterpillars walk in a procession, and that's how they get their name. So as an experiment, he took processionary caterpillars and he put them around a saucer that was turned upside down and lined them up end to end, and he just watched them as they followed each other around the saucer. He wondered how long it would go before one of them broke rank and went after food. But they didn't. They continued walking around the saucer over and over and over again, day after day after day, until finally they were starving to death. So Dr. Fabre puts pine needles on the top of the saucer. That's the natural food of the processionary caterpillar. But still they would not break rank. They continued around the saucer, following one after another, day after day after day. Now, with what they needed the most to survive being just less than an inch away, they still continued in their routine. And one thing that was drawn from this by the psychologist is that we do the same thing. Sometimes when we find ourselves in a situation that is not easy or difficult, or something's happened to us that knocked us down and we don't think we can get up, we continue around the same path day after day, bemoaning our existence, feeling sorry for ourselves perhaps, feeling those hurtful emotions that are still there. And they come from all sorts of different activities in life. So the psychologist suggests that we have to move to a point where we open ourselves up. And that basically is pretty simple. It's going from being hopeless to hopeful. Hopeless, we continue going around the same track day after day after day. Hopeful, we have the confidence and courage to stand up, move forward into an existence that we don't know what is going to be, but we know it's going to be different. Now, I bring this up today because I wanted to share with you a story that occurred to me when I first went into ministry. This is 30 years ago or so. I was at the Myrtle Fillmore Healing Center over at 75th and Mission Road. Only one there, only staff member. Most of the day I sat around and did nothing. But I didn't get paid anything either, so I figured it was even. But I get a phone call this one day, and there's a woman named Jane, and she lived in a small town in western Kansas. And she said that she had been reading different things and learned that Unity believes in healing. And she wanted to know if Unity could heal her. I asked her what the situation was and what she needed healed. And she shared with me that her and her husband had two sons. One was 7, one was 8 years old. They lived in a nice little house in this small town. Every Friday night, they would go out to celebrate at the local roadhouse that was about 20 miles down the road. And about 4 months previous to this phone call, her and her husband were on the way home in his pickup truck. He lost control. It rolled over. Jane was thrown from the vehicle and severed her spinal cord. She said she came home and things were very, very difficult because she had to depend on everybody for everything, even the most personal items. But the two boys chipped in the best they could. The husband, not so much. And finally, he suggested that perhaps Jane invite her best friend to come live with them and help out as a caretaker. They'd give her free room and board and give her a little stipend while she was there, but it'd make things so much easier. They approached the girlfriend, and she said, sure, I'd be glad to do that. So the girlfriend moved in, and everything was going okay for a while until one day, Jane's husband came to her, told her that he had fallen in love with the girlfriend, and she had fallen in love with him, and that they're leaving together. He said that he had talked to some friends in the neighborhood, and they were going to check on her and help her the best they could, but he and the girlfriend were going away. It was at that point that she broke down and started crying and said, just tell me, can Unity heal me? And I didn't know what to say. All the doctors had pretty much determined that her condition was permanent. But she pleaded. I said, well, let's pray. Let's pray. And so we prayed together, and she said, dear God, just give me my boys back. Give me my husband back. Give me my home back. Give me my body back. I just want my life to be the way it was. And I prayed along with her. And we said, amen. Well, she called back in about 2 weeks, and we talked again. Went over some different things, some changes in her life, how she was getting along all by herself. But it all ended up, every phone call with a, can I be healed? Can I be healed? And I would just sit there in silence. I didn't think she could. Finally, at the end of one of these calls, I says, well, let's pray, but tell me, what exactly do you want to pray for? She said, well, I want to pray to have my body back to its functioning condition. I want to pray for my husband to come back home and to love me. I want to pray to go out and be active. I want to pray to be happy, to have love in my life, and to be able to be active. I says, okay, well, let's pray for that. Let's pray for your happiness. Let's pray that you can be up and be active somehow, some way. Let's pray that you will find love. but not specifically in any particular thing. Well, she hung up. I didn't hear from her for a long, long time. Then about 8 months later, she called, and she sounded just marvelously happy. And I said, Jane, what's going on? You sound better than you ever have. She said, yes, I prayed, and my prayers were answered. She says, I read the story about a man who went to visit his friend on a big English estate. And he was going to go out walking one day, and his friend said, be very careful because there's a lot of landmines out there that haven't been filled up. And if you're out there in the dark, you're liable to fall into one of them, and some are 20 or 30 feet deep. So the man was out walking around, and sure enough, he got lost. Sure enough, it began to get dark. Sure enough, he stumbled into one of these landmines. But as he was falling, he was able to grab a hold of a rock that was coming out of the side of the wall. So there he hung. He started yelling for help over and over and over again. When he didn't come home, the friend got a search party together, and they went out looking for him. And finally, they heard him yelling in the distance. And as they moved towards the landmine, there he was hanging on the rock, and they shined the flashlight down on him, and he was hanging a foot from the ground. That particular mine shaft had been filled in. So Jane told me when I read this, I realized that I was hanging on to a lot of stuff because I was afraid to let go. I was afraid to let go of the idea that my body could be restored to good health. I was afraid to let go of the idea that my husband would come back to see me. I was afraid to let go of the idea that I could ever be active or never be active. And then I prayed. I prayed for happiness. I prayed for love, and I prayed for being active. She said, I started going to my boys' softball games. And one day, the coach came over and asked me if I would like to be the umpire. Well, that was thrilling. I had something to do. I became the official umpire of the team, so to speak. And Jane said, when I was umpiring, the librarian from the local library came up to me and said they had an opening for somebody at the checkout counter. She thought I'd be excellent. Their facilities would accommodate me. Wanted to know if I wanted the job. She said yes. So I took it. So now I have a job and I'm umpiring. About that time, Orville would come in once or twice a week and exchange books, and pretty soon we got to know each other. Orville ended up asking me out on a date, and now we're going steady. She said, this is it, Duke. She said, I thought not being able to walk meant not being able to live. I thought that my happiness and my love and my activity in the world was dependent upon my husband, dependent upon my body being restored, dependent upon everything going exactly the way it was before. But then I realized before wasn't that good. My husband and I weren't getting along with each other. We were drinking way too much. That was the cause of the accident. We'd even talked about divorce. She said, but now I am happier than I have ever been. And this really shocked me. She said, if I could go back to the way things were before the accident, where I was fine, my husband was fine, the kids were fine, we're all getting along, she said, I wouldn't do it. The happiness I have now is so much more. And it's not based on anything outside of me. It's based on the love inside of me. Now that is the power of grace, the grace of God. And all of us have heard the song, Amazing Grace. You know, I once was blind, but now I see. Blind to any future, blind to any hope, blind to anything that could allow me to rise above the pain and agony I was suffering. Blind to. I was lost, could not be found. All of us have been there, where something happens in our lives and we are lost to any hope for the future. This especially comes about when our losses are permanent. If we lose somebody to death, very difficult to get over. If there's a very nasty divorce of some sort, and reconciliation is never going to be in the picture, that's difficult to get over. So many emotions come into play. Emotions of failure, emotions of guilt, emotions of shame, emotions of anger, emotions of rage. All of those things come into play. She said, but the biggest thing is hopeless. Not having hope for tomorrow or the next day or the rest of your life. That puts us on that solitary track, going around and around and around, day in and day out. Hope is that which opens up the curtains of grace. The hallway of grace is that which we walk down to find new activities in our life that can raise us up and move us beyond the hardship that we're facing. It's hope, grace, and action. Now we have to generate the hope. We have to think of what am I hoping for in my life. And if it's hoping for a spouse that ran off and doesn't want anything to do with you, or it's hoping for somebody to come back from the dead, or if it's hoping for somebody at your workplace to rehire you because you got fired, those hopes probably aren't attainable. You hope for the emotion that they're connected with. You hope for true love with somebody, and that love will come to you. You hope for a better future financially. That'll come to you. You hope for a greater social network, a better job, whatever it might be. But you have to recognize that the grace of God is there to raise you up and to move you forward, and you have to take that first step. That first step represents hope, and we can move forward. So Frank Sinatra had a song, That's Life, and I forget the lyrics, but it's true for all of us. It's, you're on top in April, shot down in May. Life is a series of missteps, a series of problems, a series of challenges, but they're meant to come into our lives momentarily and move out of our lives to provide us with something, to give us something, whether it be knowledge or higher wisdom, to be able to allow us to appreciate more what we had or what we can have. Grace will see us through. It makes all things new. So we'll take that into meditation now, and I thank you for listening.